Okay, in chapter 3, we're going to be factoring higher degree polynomials. So let's review factoring quadratics real quick. Okay, the first type is x squared plus bx plus c. When it's in standard form like this is x squared, the coefficient is a 1. There's no common factor, so we go like this. Since the first term is x squared, it must be true that this is x times x. Okay, I'm going to look at the last number and think of what I times to get 21. I'm going to check my factor sheet. Okay, to get 21, I could do 7 times 3, or I could do 21 times 1. The correct combination needs to add up to 10, so it must be the 7 and the 3. And since it's a positive 10, I'm going to make it positive 7 and positive 3. Okay, and then I'm done. And if you're doing them in your head, it's fine. You just need to be really careful. Okay, I'm going to keep going. For b, there's no common factor. So let's start like this. Since it's m to the second, it's going to be m times m. Since the last number is a 30, this times this must equal to 30. So it could be 5 times 6, it could be 3 times 10, it could be 15. It could be a bunch of stuff, but whatever it is needs to add up to 13. So that means it must be 3 and 10. And everything is positive, so we're going to keep everything positive. Okay, let's keep going. This is going to be n. Okay, last number is 8. Could be 4 times 2, could be 8 times 1. Okay, the middle term is a 6, so it seems like it's 4 and 2. But it is a minus 6, so it has to add up to minus 6. So it's got to be a minus and a minus, so it will add up to minus 6. So I'm going to put the 4 on the 2. But I had to make them minus minus, so they add up to minus 6. If I do minus 4 times minus 2, it still multiplies to positive 8. Okay, for 40, we could do 4 times 10. Does that add up? No, it doesn't. That's 14. What about 5 times 8? That adds up to 13. So that looks like it's the right number. Since this is a minus 13, though, it's got to be a minus and a minus. But I am going to put the 5 and the 8. Okay, 2 more like this, and then we'll get to the next step. Okay, K. Okay, be careful. This is a negative 28. So it's going to be a positive and a negative. Okay, what could I do? I could do 7 times 4, but one of them has to be a minus. Okay, now it has to add up to 3. If I do 7 minus 4, well, I do get 3. Okay, so I'm going to do positive 7 and negative 4. 7 times negative 4 is negative 28. 7 minus 4 is 3. So it matches both. D. Okay, what do I think? Negative 14. It's going to be a plus and a minus. Okay, if I do 7, let's do 7 times negative 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. It is a 5, but this is a negative 5. So I have the right numbers, I have the wrong signs. So let me change both sides. So let me make this negative 7 and positive 2. If I do negative 7 plus 2, now I get negative 5. And then when I multiply them, I still get negative 14. Okay, now we're going to factor ax squared plus bx plus c. That just means there is a coefficient that is not 1 in front of the x squared. Because of that, they're a little harder to do in our heads. Okay, now you did this in Algebra 1, but you all learned different methods. So the first method we're going to try is called guess and check. We're going to guess and check, but we're going to make smart guesses, and then we're going to see if it's right. Okay, so if I'm guessing, this is 5x to the second. I'm going to think, what do I times to get 5x to the second? It's probably 5x times 1x or 5x and x. So I'm just going to guess that this is correct. Okay, now I'm going to look at the last term. I'm going to think, what do I times to get 3? 3 times 1. Okay, let's try it. 3, 1. Everything is positive, so I'm going to go ahead and put positives everywhere. Okay, now the question is if it's right, because you can't just say it's right because there's no 16 in this at all. Okay, to make sure it's right, I need to multiply it out and check it. Okay, if I do 5x times x, I get 5x to the second. Okay, if I do 5x times 1, am I going to write on here? I'm going to write here. If I do 5x times 1, I get 5x. If I keep distributing, I do 3 times x, and I get 3x. And if I do 3 times 1, I do get the 3 at the end. Now, if I do 5x plus 3x, that's not 16x. So I don't have it correctly. But I had a good guess, so I just have to adjust it. So 5x and x, I don't have many options here. I did 3 times 1. So the only thing I could do is switch the numbers. So it might be a 1 here and a 3 here. I'm going to switch them, and then I'm going to see if it works again. 1, 3. Okay, let me check and see if it's right now. 5x times x is 5x to the second. 5x times 3 is 15x now. If I do 1 times x, I get 1x. 1x. Okay, 1 times 3 is still 3. Now if I do 15x plus 1x, now I do get 16x. So this is the correct way to do it. Okay, and it's called guess and check. But because we're really just guessing and checking, but we're making smart guesses. And we're hoping it's gonna work. Okay, let's try the next one using guess and check. Okay, this is 3x to the second. So I'm guessing 3x times x, or 1x. Okay, now the last number is 4. What could it be? It could be 4 times 1. It could also be 2 times 2. So this one does have 2 options. When you get better at these, you'll be able to tell the answer just looking at it. But for now, we're going to try it and see if it works. Okay, so let me just try 4 and 1. 4, 1. Okay, I want to see if it's right. If I do 3x times x, I get 3x squared. If I do 3x times 1, what is that, 3x? If I do 4 times x, I get 4x. Okay, if I do 3x plus 4x, that's not 8x. I already know it's wrong. Let me try something else. I could switch it, or I could try the 2 and the 2. Let's try the 2 and the 2. 2, 2. Okay, 3x times x, 3x squared. 3x times 2, now we're at 6x. If I do 2 times x, now we're at 2x. 6x plus 2x, that's 8x. So this must be the correct way to do it. Okay, I'm gonna keep going, changing the sign, but that's the hang of it. If that's the method you learned or you like, that'll be your method for the rest of your math life. Okay, 2x squared, 2x and x, 2x, x. Okay, this is 7. 7 times 1. Could be 1 times 7. I'm just gonna guess and see what happens. Okay, now it's supposed to add up to negative 15. It's gonna be a minus minus. You can fix it later, but if you know the sign right away, you can check it. Okay, 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 1 is negative 2x. This is negative 7x. Is that 15? That's not 15. Since 7 and 1 were my only possibilities, let's just switch the order. 1 and 7. 1, 7. Okay, let's try it again. 2x squared, good. 2x times 7. Okay, now we're at 14x. Actually, we're at negative 14x. And then down here I have negative 1x. Negative 14x minus 1x. That's negative 15x, so I got it. Okay, let's try one more using guess and check. 7x times x. Okay, the last number is a negative, which means it's going to be a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, and I have no idea which way it is, so I'm just going to guess. Okay, to get 3 times 1, or I could switch them. Okay, let me check. 7x squared is fine. Now if I do 7x times negative 1, what do I get? I get negative 7x plus 3x. Negative 7x plus 3x is negative 4x. So I'm almost right, but I have my signs backwards. Since I know the signs are backwards, I'm gonna make them the opposite. So now let's try it with a minus and a plus. So now we're 7x times 1, we're positive 7x, negative 3x. Does that work? Yes. Once you get it, box it, you're done. Okay, now if guess and check is your method, you're gonna keep doing guess and check. Some of you learned to factor by grouping. So let's do factor by grouping. And then you're gonna pick which way you like it. Okay, before we do factor by grouping, we're gonna do the basics of factor by grouping. The factor by grouping normally has 4 things, and there's normally a common factor. So if I look at A right now, I can see that they have this in common and this in common. Okay, and then the things I times by x minus 3, I times x and I times plus 5. I take the x and the plus 5, and then I bring over the common factor, and then I'm gonna show you why this is correct. Okay, if I do distributing, I do x times x, x times 3. That's this part. When I'm done with that, I do 5 times x, 5 times 3. That's this part. Okay, so this is factor. Okay, the same on this one. The common factor is the x plus 7, and this only works when they're common. The leftover is I have a 3x and a minus 4. So one parenthesis is 3x minus 4. The other parenthesis is the common factor. And it's because you're timesing the 3x and the 4 by the x plus 7. Okay, we keep going. Okay, what is it? Common factor, 3x plus 1. What are we timesing by? X plus 2. So x plus 2 in one parenthesis, 3x plus 1 in the other. Doesn't matter which one goes first. Okay, common factor right here, and I'm timesing 4x minus 5. So 4x minus 5 is one of the parentheses, 7x minus 3 is the other parenthesis. Okay, this was like the warm-up for a different method that some of you have learned, which is just as good at guess and check. It just depends on how you've done it before. Okay, now some of you learned this with an x, and some of you just learned it without the x, but it should be the same thing. Okay, normally we try to add up to the 7x. So some of you learned on the x to put a little 7 here. And then for what they times to, I'm going to times a times c. This is a times c. 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, now I want to think of two numbers that when I times them, I get 6, and when I add them, I get 7. If I do 3 times 2, that's 6. If I do 3 plus 2, that is not 7. If I do 6 times 1, that's 6. If I do 6 plus 1, that's 7. So my numbers are 6 and 1. Okay, now we're gonna use these to split the middle term. Okay, now I'm gonna bring down the 3x squared. The 6 and the 1 are how I'm gonna split the 7x up. Since it was a 7x, I'm gonna make this a 6x and a 1x. And then I'm gonna bring down the 2. Okay, this is the exact same as this, because 6x plus 1x is this. Okay, now I wanna make it look like these examples up here. So I'm gonna factor by grouping and taking out a common factor. So if I look at the first two terms, the common factor between those two is 3, but they also have an x in common. So I do 3x. If I take out 3x, 3x times x is 3x squared, 3x times 2 is 6x. Okay, I'm gonna bring down the plus sign. Okay, now when I get to the 1x and the 2, I have to take out a common factor. They don't have x's in common. They don't really have a number in common, so I'm going to take out a 1. 1 times x, 1 times 2. Okay, now we have the x plus 2's that match, and then we have the 3x plus 1 in the other parenthesis, and that's going to be our factor. Okay, so I'm going to have 3x plus 1 in one of mine, and I'm going to have the x plus 2 in the other. Okay, and that's called factor by grouping, or sometimes it's called splitting the middle term. Okay, let's try this one again. And then when we're all done, you're going to figure out which way you like, and we're going to stick with it. Okay, so for these ones, what are we adding up to? We're adding up to 10x. We're multiplying to a times c, which is 24. Okay, I want to think of two numbers I times to get 24 and add to 10. You can check your factor sheet. What is it going to be? It's 6 times 4. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 plus 4 is 10. Okay, I'm going to split the middle term. So that 10x is no longer 10. It is now 6x plus 4x. I'm going to bring down the plus 8. Okay, this is the same as this because these like terms match that. Okay, I'm going to group it. So I look at the first two and I take out the common factor. What do they have? 3 and an x. 3x times x is a 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x. Can bring down the plus sign. I'm going to go to the next two. 4 and 8, I can take out a 4. 4 times 2. Okay, these have to match. If they don't match, you're going to go back and check that you took out the greatest common factor. Okay, they have a common factor. They both have the x plus 2. So I know one of the parentheses is x plus 2, and it has a 3x plus 4 as the leftover stuff. So 3x plus 4 is one of my parentheses, and then x plus 2 is my other factor. Let's do two more like this. Okay, same deal. What are we adding up to? Negative 15. Okay, if I do a times c, I get 14. So I want to times to 14, add up to negative 15. 7 times 2, no, that's 9. What else is there? 14 times 1, Okay, I'm gonna do 14 times 1, but since it's a negative 15, I gotta make a minus. Okay, let's split our middle term. Okay, minus 14x minus 1x, and then I'm gonna bring down the plus 2. Okay, I'm gonna do a common factor. What can I take out? 7 and x. If I take out 7 and x, I'm left with 7x minus 2. Bring down the minus sign. Okay, between 1 and 2, the common factor is 1. So that's minus 1x. And then to get a positive 2, I need a minus 2. And they need to match. Okay, so one of my parentheses is going to be 7x minus 1. The other one's going to be x minus 2. Oh, and I should tell you because people sometimes ask. If I do negative 1 and negative 14 switched, you'll have a different step here, but you'll have the same answer at the end. So don't worry if your step is different as long as we're getting the same answer. Okay, one more like this. This is adding up to negative 4. It's timesing to 3 times negative 15, negative 45. Okay, to get negative 45. 15 and 3. No, that's not going to give me 4. 9 and 5. Well, I could do 9 and 5. 9 times 5. One of them has to be negative. It must be negative 9, so it adds up to negative 4. Okay, let me bring it down. 3x squared minus 9x plus 5x. And again, you could switch the order. It's not going to change. Okay, common factor. 3x, x minus 3 plus 5 and 15. Take out the 5. X minus 3. Since they both have x minus 3s, that's a good sign. So I have 3x plus 5 and then x minus 3. Okay, those are the two main methods. So guess and check, or you can do the grouping. I would stick with one, although sometimes if you're comfortable, you can switch back and forth.